The St. Louis Blues make multiple surprising moves as Doug Armstrong places 2 players on waivers and reassign multiple to the AHL. We also get a huge update on a St. Louis Blues injury as Jim Montgomery goes into game 1 having to decide exactly who cracks this lineup out of the remaining players and gives high praise on multiple guys. We're going to break down all of this and so much more later on this episode. So let's just hop straight into it, actually, Darius, where we go into today and we do see that Oskar Sundqvist needed help getting off the ice and he couldn't put any weight on one of his legs. Now, this is a big blow. Sundqvist, who is going to be a big part on this bottom 6 for the St. Louis Blues. We know the leadership he brings. He brings experience winning 2 Stanley Cups, one with Pittsburgh and one with St. Louis. But what is your thoughts on Sundqvist going down with an injury just days ahead of the opener?
Yeah, awful timing. A lot of fans are speculating, was it Milan Lucic that was behind this? But all jokes aside, they have to make some decisions coming up here in the next couple of days, some major decisions, and they've already made some moves, which we'll get to later in this episode as well. But this is devastating. This is horrible timing for Sundqvist, who looked like he was going to make the team and play a prominent role for this team this season. So very unfortunate. Didn't look good. Like if you saw the video that's floating around there on Twitter, didn't look good. Obviously, we don't have any updates yet. We will probably have an update tomorrow. We'll do a video on that when the time comes, but does not look good. Bad timing. And I think this completely changes what the bottom 6 will look like. And they might have to shift around a couple guys and who actually ends up making the team now, because it did look like there was a couple guys trending towards being, the 14th forward or the 13th forward at this point. Maybe now they get moved up into the lineup. It's just, creating a whole bunch of different things. So I'm sure we'll get an update tomorrow on his health and what it looks like ahead of the first game of the season. And then they'll make some decisions based off that. But terrible timing for Sundqvist, because again, he's been a big part of this team for years, and it looked like he was going to play another big part this season. So we'll see who ultimately ends up taking his spot if he is out. But, the Blues did make some other moves today, which are very interesting.
And let's just hope that it's one of these injuries that it stings in the moment and he comes back perfectly fine. But the St. Louis Blues continued on making multiple moves today. Now we're going to get into the waivers, but looking at the 5 players that were reassigned to Springfield, we see Dvorsky. You can work your way down. Stenberg. There's a lot of guys, and a lot of these players, especially guys like Dvorsky and Stenberg, they were trying to push through, but they need to have a roster submitted to the league going in tomorrow evening. So the big thing with the Blues, they're finally making their cuts. Now there are 2 more names that we're going to touch on, like I said, with waivers, and there's 2 more guys that they need to decide. But the big thing is we've seen a lot of high praise come from Jim Montgomery on these players, on Skinner, Stenberg, and Kaskimaki. We can see, if I had to pick a couple off the top of my head, I would say these guys. They all did a lot to show they can play in the league, but again, they also got to show they can really be good American League players. Now, there is one guy we're going to touch on, but what is your thoughts on this series, seeing the praise come from the head coach on 3 guys that are going back to the AHL?
Well, I think this actually says a lot more about Dvorsky, who he didn't mention in this, than the other guys, because he still needs to see what they can do at the AHL level consistently. But I think with Dvorsky, he knows, like, this guy was very close to making this team, and he's right there, and we know what he can do at the AHL level. Also, the list of guys who were sent down today, that is the all-time best names of all time list. I just wanted to point that out, and because Theo Lindstein, one of my favorite names of all time in the league. So again, Dvorsky, I think he's really close. And then high praise for the other guys from the head coach. This is something that you like to see, the head coach praising these guys on the way out as they head down to Springfield. And it's not the last time we're going to see some of these guys this year. Like we just saw and just talked about, Sundqvist out with an injury. We don't know what's going to happen in terms of the makeup of the team, but injuries happen over the course of a season, and guys are going to end up getting called up. And I'm sure we'll see Dvorsky at some point this season, maybe even for an extended period of time. So I don't think these guys should be discouraged. They played really, really well. Stenberg, I mean, showed out. He was very impressive, I think, the entire preseason. Very smooth, great two-way player. So excited to see what he's going to be able to do, with the full season in the AHL, and continue to develop at the obviously in North America and at the pro level. So that'll be a lot of fun. But super smooth player. I'm excited to see what he's going to turn into. But let's not rush these guys, right? They look good, but they will be the future of this team. Let's see what they can do in the American Hockey League first. So to me, Stenberg was the one that stood out, because we know what Dvorsky can do at the AHL level. We know Dvorsky is going to be a great NHLer, whether it's on the wing to start or center, depending on his his timeline. But again, a couple guys like Stenberg, even Lindstein, he looks like he's going to be a solid defenseman. So excited for that. So yeah, good stuff from the prospects. Ultimately, I think we all knew that, you know, this day was going to come. They were going to be sent back at some point right before the season started. But I think, you know, something else that's interesting is, you know, another player we'll touch on, and somebody that, you know, is going to either get cut or make the team now because of maybe, you know, the injury to Sundqvist.
And I mean, the biggest thing is going back on Stenberg for a minute. He looked outstanding. We've seen him play great in Europe. He came over to the AHL in North America and played great as well. But the big thing, like you said, a 200-foot game, you can see Blues Muse hyping him up. This is a player that's a lot farther along than a lot of people, including us, expected coming into camp. He really showed that he's only a year or two away from being a dominant force in the NHL. And I think the biggest thing, like you said, having these guys go back and just work on their game, continue to dominate in the AHL, get more reps in is great. You could put him on a fourth line, but that kind of hinders the development in the NHL. So the big thing is looking at the Blues team. We know how good they are. They took the President's Trophy winners to Game 7. They upgraded their roster. They go into a season with a lot of surprising faces in camp, like Justin Carbonneau, who did get sent back. But a lot of these guys are going to go back and develop, and it shows the Blues have a great core at the moment that's still very young, but they have this plethora of prospects coming through the system that's going to be impact players over the next few years. So what they're building right now is kind of scary when you look at it from the outside of any NHL team looking at what the Blues are doing. But this continues in on two guys hitting waivers, Skinner and Colten Ellis. Now, Skinner got a lot of praise coming from Jim Montgomery. We've seen the quotes, and breaking down these two players, I would not be shocked, and it sucks to say, if we see one or both being claimed on waivers. Now, the big thing is, and the benefit we have, both guys haven't played in the NHL yet. AHL Skinner looked great. He played some great games. He came into camp looking better than Matthew Kessel. But what is your thoughts before getting into Ellis on just Skinner not making this team?
Yeah, and I think it's interesting because we did a video last week about how Jim Montgomery came out and said that Skinner was looking really good and he was making it very tight, very interesting with Matthew Kessel. And ultimately, one of them was going to be the seventh defenseman. And like we know now, experience always wins. You know, not always with some coaches, but we know Jim Montgomery, for the most part, he likes his younger players, but he does like some NHL experience as well. So he ultimately went with Matthew Kessel for that. And then Skinner is being sent down. So, and not necessarily sent down. Hopefully he does not get claimed. And we will have an update for that tomorrow, obviously, once everyone either clears waivers or gets claimed around 2 p.m. Eastern. So we'll, you know, keep an eye on that. But he was great. He was great in the preseason. He looked really good. And I think Jim Montgomery, obviously, you know, great praise for him last week. So it was really tight. If he does ultimately, you know, go back to Springfield, I'm sure we'll see him back at some point. He's going to continue his development, but another really good piece if there are some injuries for the Blues, a young, hungry player.
And I think the big thing is, too, if an injury does happen on this Blues blue line, they're going to get Skinner probably be the first name called up unless they want to go the route of not having to put him through waivers again, which we completely understand, but it goes straight into the second guy, which is a lot of more intriguing. Colten Ellis has been dominant in every single league, the ECHL, the Q, all the way to the AHL. His numbers are incredible. Everything this kid does is incredible between the pipes, but it does get interesting. We know the goaltending situation. Jordan Binnington and Hofer are two guys that are going to play every single night. You're going to have these guys, one on the bench, one between the pipes, and feel great. Binnington during the preseason, what was a 973 save percentage? He looks mid-season form already, but Colten Ellis is a guy that the Blues may actually end up losing. Listen, Colten Ellis hasn't played in the NHL. Maybe teams are looking at this and saying, hey, we don't know the experience. We don't know what he's going to bring. But Darius, would you be shocked if a team's looking at this and saying, hey, we have decent goaltenders. We wouldn't mind a third to keep on this roster. Ellis could come in and steal the show on another team, because I think there is a world, and I hope I'm completely wrong, that Ellis might actually be claimed.
Yeah, I think a lot of fans are hoping that this is not the case because, like you mentioned, he's been dominant at every single level that he's played. And I think that he's a very attractive piece going through waivers for a lot of teams around the league right now who are trying to figure out their goaltending. This is a guy, to me, that if he was outside of this organization, he's definitely in the NHL. He's definitely ready, I think, especially being 25 years old. So, you know, if he was playing on any other team, any other organization, he'd be in the NHL. And I do wonder if a lot of teams are looking at him and now, you know, they can pick him up before tomorrow know. So it'll be very interesting to see what happens with that. Hopefully he stays within the organization. It's a tough situation, right? Binnington and Hofer, you know that these guys are going to be your goaltenders. They're going to be in the NHL, barring any injuries, right? And for the next 2 years, great tandem that the Blues have. So it'll be interesting to see what ends up happening. It would be tough to lose a player like this, but you do have two solid goaltenders, but he's a great young goalie, only 25 years old. So it'll be a tough loss if they do lose him to waivers, but we'll see. If he goes down to Springfield, that would be awesome.
And I know the biggest question around this team now is going in with the PTO of Lucic and Texie, the two last guys fighting for a spot. Darius, quickly, because listen, we can do a full video on this, just breaking it down when they make the decision. But at this very moment, do you think one of these guys have the edge over the other?
Yeah, I don't know why Lucic is here personally, and I've made that known on the channel, so I'll just say it again. I don't know why, and he might ultimately end up making the team. And credit where credit is due, but I didn't understand the signing when it happened. He hasn't looked particularly great through preseason, to me at least, and he's hanging around, so he might end up making the team. But he brings something that's a little bit different than Texier as well, so that could be a deciding factor. And now Sundqvist's injury, if that is significant, that would be a deciding factor as well. So we'll see how that plays out. But personally, I don't know how you feel, and let us know how you feel in the comments below. I don't understand that move, and I never have.
And I think that's a big thing. Hey, he scored in a preseason game last night to get his first of the preseason, but the biggest thing is missing practice today with a bit of an injury. It seems like his better years, obviously, are behind him. But fans, what is your thoughts on this? What is your thoughts on the Sundqvist injury? Who steps up to take over an important role on this team if he's out for significant amount of time? What is your thought of the guys put on waivers? Do you think Kessel should have been the one sent down instead of Skinner? Let us know all your thoughts down in the comments. And speaking of comments, let's go straight into comment today. Coming from Kevin, and he said Broberg should be the top pairing. Broberg has the ceiling to be a cornerstone defender. And listen, it's only going to be a couple seasons until we do see this. Fowler has been playing incredible. Taking him off the top line, I don't think we should do at the moment, but Broberg is going to be, if not already, one of the top defensemen in the league. But what's your guys' thoughts on the thing? Leave your comment down below, and you could be featured on Comment of the Day. While you're down there, leave a like, subscribe, share this with your friends. We'll be back in another episode, so keep your eye for that. But I've been your host, Mark, with my co-host, Darius, and take care, Blues fans.